Welcome to the Psychedelic Diaries. I am your host, Ray Christian, and we have a show for you today. We will be discussing consciousness retreats, the challenge of letting go, and of course, experiences on high doses of psychedelics. Cameron Wenaus of Retreat Guru will be here momentarily for a deep dive and a soul search. But first, as usual, let's start things off with a nugget and a noodle. In today's news nugget, psilocybin improves mental health for a year. Almost 60% of participants in a new Johns Hopkins study showed a dramatic improvement in depression 12 months later, after just 1 or 2 high doses of magic mushroom treatments. So FDA and DEA, there's either some medical value or profound value. Either way, with this rescheduling, let's get going here. And as for the noodle, something I've been noodling on of late, is how do we support the solo explorers? Now, in the name of harm reduction, I've talked a lot about my own personal solo trips on our TikTok account, and it has been startling to see how many people have come out of the woodwork to share that they are also engaging high-dose solo magic mushroom trips. So how can we help them? They keep telling me they crave dialogue with other travelers, they want help with liftoff and landing, and they're sick of the stigma from non-travelers that just don't get it. For some people, a guide just isn't right or doable. So how can we help the lone wolf travelers that are out there exploring their consciousness? Maybe a remote community, perhaps a collection of hard-earned lessons, or even a digital product that bookends their journey. Something to noodle on. Our next guest is the CEO of Retreat Guru, one of my favorite psychedelic companies. They have had 200,000 psychedelic retreat bookings all over the world. Cameron Wenaus, welcome to the show.
Hey, Ray. Thanks for having me. It's so far, it's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, appreciate that. Well, let's dive right in, Cam. You started off with a wellness retreat platform, and Retreat Guru has become perhaps the premier hub for consciousness expanding retreats. And I'm curious, what has surprised you about this psychedelic renaissance?
Uh, I think at the beginning when we started out, I come from a meditation background, and I've been done 20 years of meditation retreats, and for the beginning, it was always about, okay, how do we get from baseline to, I wouldn't say exalted states, but higher states of awareness. So maybe through, having profound glimpses of emptiness or non-dual states. And that's the beginning. And, so our whole company is around that piece. But what surprised me over the last year is actually there is a huge group of people that are not even at baseline, that are actually well below baseline. It's actually really heartbreaking. There's a whole bunch of people out there that have suffered from deep depression, treatment-resistant depression, anxiety. They're suicidal, and they're coming to us for looking for alternatives to the drugs that don't work for them. And I think that's what's been the most surprising, is that this psychedelic renaissance, this movement, isn't actually comprised of seekers, let's say, people that want to experience profound non-dual states of awareness. But it's actually, there's a large movement that is coming from people that just want to get to baseline. They want to have normal, healthy relationships and engaged lives. And they're well below baseline. So I'm heartened by that. I feel like that's when the movement becomes a real movement, when it's not just the tip of the spear, but it's actually the weight behind it.
I appreciate that. And just want to say thank you for being one of these guys that's out there pushing the needle and truly changing lives in this interconnected world where we all change each other by 0.00001% or whatever it is. You're really out there making a difference. So thank you for being one of these guys that's just really blazing the path. And I love this concept of getting to baseline and Yes, it's great to triage the depressed, the anxious, the people that are really struggling. But it does seem like it's a bigger amount of people, a bigger demographic that are just kind of struggling and not at this baseline and want to get there. So I love how you articulated that. You once told me that, even with these people that just want to get to baseline, there's the biggest challenge you're having is that customers are afraid of expanding their consciousness or psychedelics or even daily meditation. Why do you think it's so hard for people to let go and explore altered states?
Yeah. I don't know if I can answer that for other people, but I can tell you about myself. I mean, I've done a number of ceremonies, and I mean, before I get into that, there's the kind of two aspects of fear. I think there's the basic fear about like, am I going to be physically safe?
Mm,
I'm going to a new experience. If I'm a woman traveling, should I be traveling to this country alone? Should I be going without a friend to a ceremony where I don't know what's going to happen? How am I going to get from point A to point B? So there's just like a physical safety fear that comes along with that. And then there's a whole other category of fear, which is around more like ego death. And this is the more the fear that I experience every time a large ceremony or a retreat comes up. There's always a part of me that has fallen back asleep,
mm,
and has re-solidified back. Okay, I'm me. I'm real. This is all solid. I'm in my world, and the other world is out there. You're out there. I'm in here, and that's really comforting. There's a lot of ground and earth in that feeling, and then psychedelics have a uncanny ability to break that illusion, and that illusion is from the vantage point of being very solid and uh, you could say dualistic, that the breaking that illusion is really terrifying. From ego death, ego doesn't want to die. you know and it has a lot of tricks. There's a lot of tricks, man. I mean, I still have a ceremony that'll come up and I'll be like, oh, I'm just too busy. No, I
yeah.
can't do this. I don't have time. And I was like, what? You've done hundreds and of retreats and also of ceremonies, and that's not, what's happening here, the process, and I still fall prey to it. And what I think I've learned, to get around that, is to work with that fear, is to bring that fear along with me. It's like, okay, you're really
Huh.
scared, Cam, and that's fine. Take that fear into ceremony with you. Like, come on, fear, we'll both go. And you're like, let's go. I'll give you a bucket. You get your own bucket, and that's helpful, because it's not seeing fear as a detractor, an obstacle, but it's actually, it's almost, it can be like acknowledging it can be like, oh, right, that's healthy. That's like that. It almost says to me that something potentially profound is going to happen on this retreat. Often it's the retreats that I go to where I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll just go and do the ceremony. And I don't have that kind of initial, that those sometimes tend to not be very profound moments. But the ones that I'm always, if I look back, it's like, oh yeah, I really had a lot of resistance to that one. Those tend to be quite profound.
Oh, well put. I love this concept of like the more fear, the more reward there can be. And I'm totally with you. I've had uh, dozens, probably 100 plus experiences, and I'm still a little bit scared going into each one. And then usually an hour in, when it's hit, I'm like, why was I so scared? This is silly. This is beautiful. This is wonderful. And yet, without fail, I'm still a little bit scared. And I think there's something about that ego that it forms again, and it likes this construct of the world it's built, and your idea of making the fear like a passenger with you, I think is really cool. And I've been playing around with this idea of just embracing the personas inside me. There's a 10-year-old inside me. He's got a name, and I let him out on a Friday night after a bong hit sometimes. And there's a tough guy on the streets, and those persona. Maybe there's a fear persona that comes with you. Very well put. So speaking of challenges and some hard-earned lessons, Cam, I love your company's concept. This idea of perhaps the Airbnb for psychedelic retreats. I know you're much more than just psychedelic, it's meditation and yoga as well. But you were and are, I believe, ahead of the curve. And I'm curious, as you look at, let's just say, the last 12 months at Retreat Guru, What's been one hard-earned lesson?
Okay. Well, wow, so many. There's been many. Why do I have to choose one? So I guess I don't know if this seems like an obstacle to me, but it's not. I, well, the one that I feel is the most hard earned, and this comes with maybe a bit of humility, is that from the beginning, we we're both a SaaS company, so we sell software for retreat centers to run their operations. So like large retreat centers like Temple the Way of Light, or Synthesis, or Soltara. I'm just naming a few psychedelic centers, use us for their software, which is great. We also work with meditation centers and yoga centers, and then we're also a consumer facing marketplace. So we're having to constantly like move resources from one to another. So that's a challenge for us as we're. But I'm very close to I'm very close to the SaaS side of our company. But from the marketplace side, one of my biggest lessons, and it's really recent, was, and this is going to sound, it's almost like ridiculous that I'm saying this, but it's like, talk to your customers. And I can't believe, from the SaaS side, like we've always been very connected to our customers. We really understand what their needs are. When we launched this marketplace, I was distant a little bit from our customer base. Like I wasn't on. So this last couple of months, I actually been on support. I've been the one, when you call 1-800, you'll get me. And I'm having really intense, beautiful personal conversations with people who are suffering, who are looking for help, looking for guidance. They've never had a psychedelic experience before in their life, and they're looking to, or they had one 40 years ago. I talked to a guy yesterday. He's a doctor. He's 65. He had a psychedelic experience 40 years ago. He did LSD, and he hasn't had anything since. And now he really wants, with this renaissance, he's like, I want to have this experience again. And I'm having difficulty with my wife, and she has PTSD. We want to do this together. And so these are moments for me that are like, wow, okay. And then I start using our own product more. They start informing me. Another lesson that has been a harder lesson for me is that the realization that we need to be a curated marketplace. We've been an open system for a long time, which means like Yelp. Just imagine, like anybody can be on Yelp, and then you rely on the reviews to sort the good and the bad. But we've had some operators and some ayahuasqueros and some retreat centers that aren't actually good actors. They're operating not in integrity. They're operating outside of a lineage. They've got a lot of people saying that they shouldn't be practicing. There's sexual assault charges against them, and we found them on our marketplace. So we're like, holy, we need to get them off. So that there's a movement towards becoming a curated marketplace, that we now have to do a lot of cleanup, and then who are we to be saying who should and shouldn't be on it? Like from one perspective, we do need to be this layer of vetting for someone to say, hey, listen, I'm going on Retreat Guru. I trust that you guys have looked over this and that you're going to guide me to the right experiences. That's a brand promise that we have to deliver. But on the other side, I've got my own biases. Like I might talk to somebody and go, these guys are way out. No, they're crazy. I don't want, and other people in the company might look at them and say, no, they're perfectly aligned if things are fine. So we have to sort of make sure that we're not the judge and jury. At the same time, we provide a layer of vetting that's responsible. So that's been a big lesson for the last 12 months, is maybe I'd say, Ray, it's like understanding the sheer responsibility that we have being a marketplace for psychedelic retreats, when these are moments when people are very vulnerable. If you can get into a situation where it's easy to defer power, if you haven't done your due diligence, you could be getting into a tricky spot. And so we have to make sure that people have safe and transformative experiences. And so and this is the Wild West. It's like, this is just beginning. And so we've turned around and said, oh my goodness, how did this end up happening? Here we are. Because of course our marketplace is not just for psychedelics, it's for yoga and meditation, but psychedelics is a very large category for us. And just realizing how much responsibility we have.
Ah, that is brilliantly put. Thank you for that share and this idea of understanding the sheer responsibility that you have. It feels like a lot of companies in the psychedelic space could use that advice. And I appreciate that framework. And our TikTok just hit 10,000 followers, and we started doing these lives. And I realized it's like user research. I'm talking to them, and the value of talking to them, the fact that you're picking up the phone and talking to customers, I think is fantastic for the product. And I guess if you're bored on a Saturday night, call the 1-800 number and maybe you'll get Cam.
You kidding me?
Speaking of, before we just switch gears, I want to chat a little bit about personal experiences. I'm a big bongo player, and I think you got a hang drum. You told me last time. How's your hang drum skills?
I will say not so good. My partner will say good. So I don't know. I mean, I'm loving it. It's like the hang drum is an easy thing to do because you can't play a bad note, which it's tuned perfectly. But I'm just down in Costa Rica for the last couple of months, so I didn't bring it. I was so close to bringing it, but I was like, I don't want to have a backpack. But the drum's been beautiful. It's a lovely expression of creativity. I'm having a good time.
It is a good expression of creativity, especially something with percussion. And I think the trip, or when you're landing from the trip. Speaking of which, um, Cam, my discovery of magic mushrooms and the impact on cognition, creativity, and purpose really changed my life. And I'm curious, what has your journey with psychedelics been like?
Okay. Uh, what's it been like? It's been life changing. I wasn't a seeker. I'm not a seeker. I don't think I ever was a seeker. I started out, I got introduced into meditation. My HR prof in my MBA said, "You guys are going to be really stressed. You should meditate. It also reverses heart rate and muscle tension and things that will kill you quickly if you're an MBA." So I said, okay, that's a good idea. And then I started meditating, and within maybe 2 or 3 sessions of that, I had a moment where I saw my mind. I saw this monkey mind that was constantly chit-chatting away. But I was like, what is it that's seeing this mind? And it just took that moment to go, oh, wow. It's like you've been on a TV your whole life, and then it comes back just 2 feet. And you're like, whoa, there's a whole bunch of space all around this TV. The show's still going on, but there's just space everywhere. And then of course, the TV gets sucked right back into your face. So that was my first experience with meditation. And from then I just became like, well, this is like the manual for the mind. This is like your operating system. I want to know how the operating system of my mind works. And then flash forward maybe 15 years into that, in like early 2000s, I started working with I'd always done like LSD but it varied just almost in the party doses, or exploratory stuff. But the early 2000s, maybe mid 2000s, started working with ayahuasca, and it was incredibly profound. And for me, there's like another moment, like there's that moment of with the TV, but then there's also maybe a few more where it's like you even go back. I've found with psychedelics, they have given me for the meditation practice, they've enabled me to have glimpses or direct experience with a very almost abstract, esoteric Buddhist teachings that were never fully accessible to me. And then it's like, oh, this is what they're talking about. Now I have certainty. Now I know I can't just go back to the bar or the ayahuasca bar to drink to have a non-dual experience. But I now know that through my meditation practice, I can actually stabilize that. So ayahuasca and psychedelics have given my Buddhist path a lot more gravitas and released any sort of doubt that I've had. There's doubt. Doubt's a part of the path, and you should keep it. It's healthy, but that's for sure been very impactful for me.
Oh, what a
Yeah.
brilliant narrative. Thank you for that share. I love that TV analogy, this idea of abstracting back and being like, oh, wow, I'm not the TV. I'm the thing that's watching the thoughts in this TV, and bringing gravitas to the Buddhist
Or
thoughts. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, are you even that thing that's watching the TV? I mean, what are you?
Yes, these are, and I love how you talked about this idea of it's like a rising tide raising all boats when you've got meditation and psychedelics and maybe some Buddhist teachings, and some really special stuff happens there. Let's do one quick deep dive, if you don't mind, Cam, into a specific powerful experience. I'll share one briefly, and I'll kick it to you. Um, I had a powerful mystical experience where I traveled into expanded dimensions. I saw things that defy words. And when my consciousness collapsed back like a Matthew McConaughey in Interstellar Tesseract into this reality again, I felt completely and utterly reborn. And I'm curious, Cam, what's a one profound mystical experience that still resonates with you?
That's you have some good questions. Um, I was I remember there was a couple of years ago where I was kind of manifesting as a real asshole at work. And people actually had to come to me and said, you can't do this anymore. You have to be kinder. And it's like, okay, cool. And I looked into it, and there was this place where I was coming from a lot of fear. uh, I remember it was like I was looking at why am I so scared about or driving the sales team hard or doing this, and it's like I'm actually the root of this kind of neurotic behavior on the top of the surface. The root of it was fear, and so I started doing some like feeling into the feel, like what am I afraid of? And then I got as far as I could get down into the basement of fear. I thought I'm afraid of death. If I trace everything back, well, I'm scared of this, then I might lose the company, and then I might lose, then I'm going to end up in a cardboard box, and then I'm going to die. Or if that happens, and if I don't do this, then, da, 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 and then I'm going to die. And I was like, oh, my real fear is of death. And that's what's like driving all these other sort of branch fears that manifest in these neurotic behaviors. So I was like, well, maybe you should look at that. So I remember I had a men's ceremony, in part of my men's group. We decided to work with DMT. And I actually thought it was going in for a DMT experience, but it turns out it was a 5-MeO DMT experience. And so I went into the experience. My aspiration to work with this medicine was like, I want to know what it's like to die.
Hmm.
And if you ever go into retreat to a ceremony with that aspiration, just especially with Bufo. So I remember, I have this profound memory of me smoking the pipe, leaning back, exhaling, and it was quite a lot of smoke that came out, and leaning back, and then screaming at the top of my lungs. Because I all of a sudden realized, I was like, oh shit, I'm dying. I didn't have this experience of like, oh, this is what it's like to die. I was actually dying. It was actually dying. And I was like, oh my God, you were messing around. You were pushing the boundary here, but now you're actually dying. So all I can remember is this complete blackness and yelling at the top of my lungs, like screaming, like, help, I'm dying. I'm dying. And then there's this infinite, all I was in this infinite black space, and it was pure nothingness. And I could hear voices. That black space also had voices, and they said, it's okay, let go, let go. But those voices were also dying with me. We were all dying together. It was the acknowledgement that this everything as I knew it was dying. And it was terrifying. But finally I was like, okay, I'll just let go. It was also choiceless. I completely let go. And then that morphed into what was really fascinating is like having let go into that, all of a sudden there was this blazing light, brighter than a million suns. And all it was this light. And this light is everything. It was everything that was. It is everything that will be. It is everything that possibly exists. And it was now. And there was no escaping it. It was an infinite now. And this is all the river is. And it's at this point. It was like the complete, all of infinity was reduced to one point that was also a billion suns. And it was like, this is who you are. This is it. There is no escaping this because this is just a point. You can't escape. You can't get out of it. If a point is then that's it. It's just this. And I understood. I was like, oh, there was like, this is it. This is what reality is. It's, and then death. And then I started coming back, and I sat up, Of course, I looked around at all the guys that were holding space for me, and they were just like, ashen face because I had been screaming, I guess, quite a lot. And I sat up, and they said, they said like, well, how was your death? And it dawned on me. It's like, oh, death is an illusion. It's like a misunderstanding, a complete misunderstanding. And then I witnessed something really unique, which is with 5-MeO, which is that you get to watch, after complete ego dissolution, you get to watch your ego reconstruct itself. So then I said something else, and I noticed someone smiled, and I was like, oh, okay. I'm feeding off of that judgment. I'm being accepted here. Okay. Oh, good. And I started to watch like my judgments come back on, my self, and I watched my ego kind of repair itself, reform slowly over 20 minutes. Let's say for a Buddhist practitioner that's interested in like the ego and its constructs and what makes up the ego. There's a lot of teachings in Buddhism on that. What's fascinating is to have this experience and watch those layers of those skandhas kind of rebuild themselves. That experience stayed with me as a present experience for months after the effect. And now I think it's just a photocopy of a memory. Well, even when I tell that story, I don't actually feel it. I'm still quite embodied, and and that's kind of what psychedelics, like you have these peak experiences, but you always come back home. Maybe you can get a residue or a memory, but it's like a postcard. It's not the thing. So anyway, that's one of my stories.
Cam, that was an exquisite description. Thank you for that share. And wow, that's incredible. This has been a phenomenal deep dive. That's a good segue then to the final segment here, the soul search. Question number 1. You get to relive the life of any historical figure. Who you got?
One of the Buddha's students. So one of his direct disciples at the time that he, I don't have a name, but I'm not going to say the Buddha, but I'll say one of his students.
To have seen the Buddha up close that's brilliant. I love that. Okay, question number 2, Kim. It's Friday night. It's been a long week, and you want to unwind. And you have all the mind-altering substances at your disposal. What is your ideal mix?
Oh, ideal mix is smoke a joint with my honey, put on some really sweet tunes, set up the lights, and have a disco dance party for 2.
I love that. I feel like I thought about this idea that music is part of the potion. It's like human consciousness, totally. A little bit of cannabis and music and mix, and that's the potion.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
Okay, so what is one challenge that has made you a better person?
Oh, I feel really like I'm hard on myself a lot. And there's something about that it offers some kindness when that gets acknowledged and released, that's made me a kinder person to other people.
Interesting. It's like a paradox of being hard on yourself, which leads to being kind to yourself and others. Oh, that's beautiful. Okay, question number 4, final question, Cam. What is the difference between someone that's had a profound mystical experience and someone that hasn't?
Nothing.
Okay.
There's no difference.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I mean, we're all, we have awareness, we don't, but fundamentally there's no difference.
I like that. That kind of ties into this non-duality. We're all the same. We're all the same person in some ways. Cam, this has been a blast. Where can the viewers find you that want to connect? Besides calling you 1-800 on a Saturday night.
Yeah, exactly. You can do that. Where can they find me personally? I mean, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. And then, of course, retreat.guru. You can check out that platform and you can connect there.
Cameron, this was fantastic. Thank you for joining the show. To the viewers, thank you for watching this episode of the Psychedelic Diaries. Please go check out Retreat Guru and check out those links. We'll get those in the description. I am Ray Christian. See you next time.